G'day, I'm Brett, and in this video I'm going to introduce to you the different types of four-wheel drive communication devices that are available for outback Australian travel that you can't go bush without. Now, in my opinion, you need to carry at least two types of communication device, both for redundancy in the case one fails, and also having short range and long range communication options. Now, in the 21st century, we are spoiled for choice. We have things available that only 20 years ago would have been dreamt about. So we're going to start with the short range communication options, move into long range, and then emergency only devices. I'll run through the list of equipment that I carry and the reasons why, and list other options so you can choose the devices that are correct for your style of travel. Please note that due to the complex nature of radio propagation, the following range distances given are to be used purely as estimations. Range will depend on several factors, including radio type, antenna selection, terrain, atmospheric conditions, and electromagnetic interference. CB or citizen band radios are your primary short-range vehicle-to-vehicle solution. Their transmission power is typically low, ranging from 1 to 12 watts. And they are most effective for line-of-sight communications, so you cannot rely on them as your sole means of seeking emergency assistance. Now, in Australia, we have two types, the UHF and the AM radio. Let's start with the UHF. UHF, or ultra high frequency, has a maximum transmission output in Australia of 5 watts. Its range varies from 5 kilometres up to 40 kilometres line of sight, and by using repeaters it may transmit over 100 kilometres. It currently has 80 channels available, and previously was 40, and requires no licence to operate in Australia. It is your primary means of communicating with nearby travellers, truckies, station owners, miners, garages for assistance. There's no point calling someone on a sat phone who's several hundred kilometres away to give you help when there may be someone just down the road who can swing round to give you assistance. Now, as I stated, the range can vary quite widely. By transmitting in simplex mode, which means on a single channel, you might get that direct line of sight 5 to 40. By using duplex mode, meaning 2 channels, so broadcasts on one, the repeater picks up that broadcast and then repeats it onto another channel and broadcasts that out again, allowing the range to be extended, that can get 100 kilometres or more. But it cannot be relied upon as an emergency means of communication, as many repeater stations are offline or badly maintained, or they're private for station owners, and vast areas just don't have repeaters. So treat this only as a short-range device for contact with local travellers. So we have two types, the handheld or the hardwired type which fit into the car. Vehicle-mounted radios come in a wide variety of sizes. This is a smaller size I prefer, as it only displays the relevant information that I require, but there are larger folded-in radio sizes. And there are those which have remote heads, such as the handset having the display and all the dials on it, which I prefer this style as sometimes I drop the handset, so I'd rather have a cheaper handset than something more expensive. This Icon radio is fairly feature-packed, but I'll cover just the basics that are common amongst most UHF radios. Comes with 80 channels. It has the duplex mode for setting the duplex function on channels 1 through 8, which are the repeater channels. So I can either turn it off and just broadcast on simplex mode, or if there's a repeater available, it will broadcast with the duplex mode. Scan functions, numerous types. We've got group and priority scan, so you can specify what particular channels you want to monitor. There's a repeater scan, which scans for any available repeaters in the area, and open scan tends to scan all channels. This is a list of the most important channels when seeking assistance. Channels 5 and 35 are for emergency use only, and it is illegal to broadcast on these except when seeking genuine assistance or emergency help. Channel 5 is the simplex output channel, and when duplex is activated, 35 the repeater input channel. Other channels likely to have traffic are 10, 11, 18, 29 and 40. Repeater channels are 1 to 8 and 41 to 48. So in duplex mode, if a repeater is available, these channels may significantly extend your range. A UHF handheld is a great way of taking communications with you. And if you only do a couple trips a year, perhaps it may be easier than trying to hardwire a unit into your vehicle. Now, I like to take both the handheld and a vehicle mount with me, as when I go hiking, I can take this with me. And in the event I injure myself, I can always get help or assistance from the local area just by radioing out and seeing who's available. Now, they come in various sizes again. This is a full-size unit, but there are smaller palm versions. But the thing to make certain of is that they broadcast at the full 5 watts transmission output. Some smaller versions may only do 1 or 2 watts, which is fine for local camp use if you're communicating with your kids who are playing in the area, but not good enough for broadcasting to a vehicle which may be several kilometers away. So this one from ICOM has the option of doing both a 1 watt or 5 watt broadcast, so I can choose depending on how far I want to transmit. It also has, again, scan functions and duplex mode. Now, one of the downsides of a handheld version is that the antenna is fixed compared to a vehicle mounted radio, where I can change the antenna to change the radiating pattern, change the decibel rating, and potentially change how far I can actually transmit and reach. So I'll go into that soon with some diagrams to explain it better. But if you're travelling Australia, get at least a UHF radio as your first means of communicating with other travellers and gaining assistance in the event of a breakdown, or you just want information on the road conditions ahead. Now, the broadcasting range of your radio is not only dependent on the transmission power output, but also on your selection of antenna. And that should depend on what type of terrain you intend to travel through dominantly. So antennas come in different decibel ratings, also called gain. This little one is a 3 decibel antenna. It's really good in mountainous hilly regions. This is a 6 decibel. It's a good all-purpose touring antenna. It's kind of good in hills and flat plains. A 9 decibel antenna, like you might see on a lot of utes in the outback, the big white sticks, they're really good in big wide open plains, like on the Unadata track. So if I took this 3 decibel on the Unadata, I wouldn't get very good reception. I wouldn't get the distance. The same with taking a 9 decibel into hilly regions, like in, say, Victoria, it would also perform poorly. In my case, I just purchased a 2 antenna kit, a 3 and a 6. This is fine for general touring, I found. I keep the 6 on most of the time, but I have the option of swapping out if I'm in a really hilly region. It also comes with its own independent grounding plane and spring. So in the event I'm in the bush and I hit some trees, which I inevitably will, I won't break the antenna. Plus, it also reduces degradation to the antenna caused by vibrations from the diesel engine. So this is where a radio mounted in a vehicle will outperform a handheld radio, as you can vary the antenna to suit the terrain. Let's take a quick look at this diagram I made. The higher the gain, the more horizontally compressed the radiating pattern of the signal, meaning the further the signal can travel, and better performance in wide open flat areas. The lower the gain, the more spherical the pattern, and the shorter the distance the signal can travel, but better performance in hilly mountainous regions. An additional radio you could fit for car-to-car communications, which I do not recommend, but is still available in Australia, is the 27 MHz AM CB radio. Now, these were completely replaced by UHF, and virtually no one has them fitted anymore. But if you're travelling in convoy and have several cars all fitted with AM radios, you have 40 channels all to yourself. They broadcast at 4 watts, but if you get a single sideband unit, it'll broadcast at 12 watts, and the range can be around 5 kilometres up to 100 kilometres. Channel 9 is for emergency use only. 8 and 11 may have traffic, and on single sideband radios using lower sideband, 16 and 35 may provide contact with someone. For long-range radio communications in Australia, we have the HF high-frequency radio. Now, these broadcast on frequencies ranging from 3 MHz up to around 30 MHz. They have a maximum output of around 100 to 125 watts, depending on manufacturer, which is significantly more than the 5 watt output of a UHF. Hence, you must have a license in order to operate a HF radio in Australia. Now, licenses are easy to obtain. You just have to join one of the several HF radio clubs that exist throughout Australia. And by becoming a member, they'll give you access to their frequencies, as well as their base stations, so you can then call out and get help. Now, of the several different HF clubs, each offers different packages, frequencies and options, as this handset can do many things, which I'll talk about soon. So the range you get out of one of these is quite a beast. When you transmit, the radio waves will not only go across the ground, which we call ground waves, they'll also beam up and hit the ionosphere and bounce back down before reaching the receiving antenna, which we call those sky waves. So using ground waves, you might get up to 100 kilometers range. That's this antenna on one car talking to another antenna on another car. But using the sky waves, this antenna will broadcast. It might bounce several times until it receives at the other end, which could be up to 3,000 plus kilometers away. It completely depends on atmospheric conditions at the time, how dense the ionosphere is, how good it is at bouncing, what frequency you're broadcasting on, what time of day it is. So there's no guarantees you'll get that range, but they are pretty powerful. Hence again why you must have a license in order to understand some of these things, because they can interrupt other telecommunication devices due to the high output. So generally when you're driving, you don't want to use these for general chit-chat, like vehicle to vehicle, but the option is there because when you do broadcast, you could potentially be heard 3,000 kilometers away if someone's tuned into that frequency, and you might interrupt their communications as well. So, as I said, there's many options on here. Let's go through a list of what some of these are. This is an Codan NGT AR, so it's one of the very top quality ones, one of the more recent Codan handsets they made, which have only just been replaced by the Codan Envoy, which is the latest and greatest digital technology. But on this radio, I can have a telephone interconnect, which means depending on which club I'm a member of, and if I paid my telephone fees and that, I can direct dial any base station and then phone call a landline or mobile. So I can talk to someone back home on a mobile phone just using this. The difference between this and a sat phone is a sat phone's private, no one else can listen in, but this is broadcast openly, publicly. So you wouldn't want to talk about your personal details, credit card details and such on this, as everyone can listen in. But the option is there to make telephone phone calls. Some of the other options, I have a list here just to help me guide me. Okay, also data transmission. I can send faxes, emails, text messaging. I can do GPS location logging as well. It just depends on the network I've joined up with and if I have the additional accessories such as a GPS receiver. I also have direct cell call, meaning I have a small number I can dial directly on this HF radio, and I can contact the Royal Flying Doctor Service, the police, roadside assistance, customs and the SES, the State Emergency Service, among many others. Various government organisations throughout Australia have their own HF radio, which you can then contact. There are also several receive-only frequencies, meaning I can listen in but I can't broadcast on them. And these include the Voice of America, the BBC World Service, amateur radio and time and weather updates. So it's a good way to get some extra information if you're out in the bush and listen to some other things that are going on in the world. So it's a good little unit for broadcasting great distances. But again, it can be a learning curve because when you want to contact a base station or another member, you have to pick the right frequency and pick the right base station depending on your location and how far away you want to transmit. And then also the time of day impacts the radio signal. So there's a bit of a dance there between those three things in order to get the right frequency at the right time for the right distance, in order to get a really clear signal. Otherwise it may not be very clear, it might be hard to hear. It can be a little play, but it's fairly straightforward. You'll figure it out once you drive around for a while and listen in, hear where other travellers are. I'm picking up people from the Simpson Desert, Charleville, further down in Victoria. It just depends how far those sky waves bounce, whether or not I can pick them up. Now, I purchased this second hand because they are quite expensive brand new. So I paid $1,500 second hand and then spent $700 at a authorised service centre and had it serviced and updated. So I'm all set to go. It's much cheaper than buying brand new. So a beautiful long range device. I can contact a base station and get road updates, weather updates, or check in my location. Or if I just need to talk to someone, their members of their in order to receive my call 24/7.
Where to tomorrow, over?
I'll stay here for probably another 4 nights, so if I can get a weather update please, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay, just stand by and I'll have a look at the weather. That'll be kind of Muller, I guess, the closest, over?
Yes, correct, over.
Okay, stand by.
So you can get updates, roads, news, whatever you need. They've got a computer there in front, they just type in.
Looks like, hello, it's not coming up. Yeah, here we go. We got Saturday today, we got a clearing shower. Yeah, tomorrow's all sunny again, so it should be all fine up after tonight.
This large black tube on the back end, and this up here is the UHF auto tune antenna. So this allows me to tune to multiple frequencies automatically without having to manually change anything. And depending on what HF radio club you join, you'll get certain frequencies. So something like this will automatically tune to those frequencies for you. Otherwise you'll need to buy a manual tap antenna and manually change the frequency around. Now I mounted mine on the back just for safety. In the event I have a head-on collision with someone or hit a cow or camel, I at least won't destroy my radio antenna, so I can most likely still call out for help. But at the back is safe, it's out of the way, won't blind or obstruct your vision. So a beautiful thing to have if you have an HF radio, just get an auto-tune one. But a much cheaper option is just a manual tap antenna. Visit my website, roamingtheoutback.com, for Roaming the Outback merchandise, including t-shirts, stickers, mugs and films, or be inspired to explore new destinations for your next Australian adventure. Moving into other technologies now that aren't radio based is the old mobile phone. Now this is great around the coastline of Australia and some of the larger country towns, but outside 30 kilometres of those towns, it's pretty much useless. Do not rely upon it as your primary long-range communication option, as you just won't get coverage. Now in Australia, Telstra is the major telco, and that's the only one which you'll typically find in most bush towns. So forget about Optus or Vodafone or any others like that. You have to go with Telstra. And that's easy enough just to buy a Telstra SIM card and put it in your phone when you're in a bush area. I've got a dual SIM card phone, so I could do that if I needed to, but otherwise I just stick with Telstra for when I'm travelling. When choosing a mobile phone, ensure it covers as many of the Telstra frequencies as possible, especially the 3G band of B5, which is still the dominant frequency used in most country towns that have not yet been upgraded to 4G infrastructure. The more bands your phone supports, the greater coverage you achieve across Australia. Also remember that smartphones these days are very easy to smash, and that might render the phone useless. So I have a ruggedized IP68 phone, which is waterproof, dustproof and shockproof. And that's sufficient for my needs when I'm travelling around. So great for the main coastal areas, but useless in most of the bush. A far superior option to a normal phone is a satellite phone. Now these are considered the ultimate in communication devices. It operates just like any phone, except it's using a satellite network in order to place the calls, which gives you direct access to family, friends or emergency services, allowing you two-way communications. Now these can come at significant ongoing cost as well as the initial purchase price, which is why I never purchased one. But I've noticed a change in that trend now, with some providers offering prepaid options, which could bring the price down significantly, as price per minute for a satellite call could be quite expensive, plus the initial connection fee. Now coverage is provided by two types of satellites, either a LEO, low Earth orbit, which orbits around the Earth, or GEO, geostationary orbit, which remains in one place above the Earth. Now there are 4 satellite providers that offer phones in Australia. They are Iridium, Inmarsat, Globalstar and Thuraya, if I pronounce that correctly. And each have their pros and cons, but Iridium is the only network that currently provides a full global coverage. So you need to look into that and see which areas you'll be travelling through if you are doing a travel worldwide outside of Australia. In order to connect to these services, you'll typically get a plan through one of the major telcos in Australia, be it Telstra, Optus or Pivotal or one of the other several private companies. So it's something to look into. but it is the best option and the quickest direct means of getting communication 24/7. Other GPS technologies available are things like GPS trackers, like the Garmin inReach, formerly owned by DeLorme, or the Spot Tracker. Now these are subscription-based services that allow for near real-time tracking of you or your vehicle. So the Spot I have it set to every 10 minutes, so it will send a ping off to satellites of my location. And my parents, who are tracking my progress around Australia, can see on a map of where I am. So in the event I do have an accident and I don't check in that I'm okay, they at least know my location to within 10 minutes. So something like a Spot, it has a PLB function, a Personal Locator Beacon, so that's for life or death emergency I can use. It also comes with a assist button, so it tells my parents that I need help. I have a text message I pre-programmed, which I can do online to say that I have a non-life-threatening or vehicle breakdown incident. So they'll know to see where I am and try and get me assistance from whoever's in the area. Then there's also a nightly check-in function. So each night I pull into camp if everything's safe and I'm okay. I hit the check-in function so they know that I've set up camp and everything is well for the night. There's the tracking function, and then another pre-programmed text message which I can send, which gets sent via SMS or email. So that's a great little unit. The Garmin inReach is actually a much better unit. It allows for two-way communication via text messaging to your friends, family, or emergency services. So it has both the PLB function plus other options of not only tracking but also getting weather updates and also GPS mapping on the unit itself. Now your subscription rate changes depending on what features you want. So it pays to just look into that and see which one's the best option for you. Now beyond something like a tracker is your PLB, your Personal Locator Beacon. This is for life or death situations only. So if you have a breakdown, you need a few parts or a bit of help, it's not really relevant until you find that you've run out of supplies and you're in a dire situation and you realize you may very well die soon, then you trip this off. But it's not a good communication device just for getting general help. But a snake bite and you're on your own somewhere, or you roll your car over, then yes, you can trip this off. Now this is a great unit. You purchase it once and you don't have to pay any subscription fees. You own the right and the ability to set off the PLB function. It comes with a 7-year battery life. So unlike a Spot tracker, which uses AAA batteries, if the batteries run flat on this from using the tracking function and I'm out in the bush and have an accident and try and set off the PLB function, I may not be able to do so unless I'm carrying spare batteries, whereas this one is always ready to go. So you register this device online and you can put down all your details, your name, vehicle, so that people know who come to rescue you, they know who you are, they know a bit about you. It helps them locate you a bit easier. But it's a beautiful device. So I carry, as you can see, quite a few options, 4 options. I've got the UHF or vehicle-to-vehicle communication, just for short range, to find out what's going on in the local area and talk with other vehicles on the same track. I've got the HF radio for two-way communications long range, so I can call out to a base station and get assistance, talk, get weather updates, road updates. Just get spare parts ordered if I need to for my car and have them organised to get them posted somewhere for me. That's that great option. Then I've got the Spot. That does my tracking of the vehicle, so my parents always know to within 10 minutes of where I am. I can change that to 5 or 2 minutes or half an hour depending on what the settings are, but I've set 10 minutes as a good in-between, and they view my position on a map, as well as having the PLB function and other pre-organised text messages that I've set up online. In worst case scenario, I can also set off the PLB, which is always ready to go, 7-year battery life. I don't have to think whether these batteries are going to be good enough to send out a message. So I feel pretty well covered for redundancy in the event that something does get damaged. I still have a backup. So hopefully that gives you the ideas of the options that are available now for Australian travel, especially for travelling remote and solo. I'd recommend carrying at least a few of these. So you do have options in the event one breaks. So if you have any questions, comments, please write them below. But I hope that gives you a good overview of the options that are now available. All the best with your travels and drive safely, and be sure to enjoy the experience. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to help support the creation of more videos, please consider becoming a patron. Click on the Patreon button on the side now. Also, if you'd like to follow along on my journey and future travels, be sure to click the subscribe button below. Thanks for watching.